Okay, so let's work on this program some because this is kind of not what we want. All right, so there's an error here. It's not working with 15. Everything is very complicated here. This is an indication we need to go back a little bit to the drawing board. So let's do x equals 15. I'm just going to start writing things here. Okay, so okay, so let's kind of think about logically what's happening here. If it is not divisible, we just want to print the number. If it is divisible, then we want to do something else. So let's do it like this. Let's say if x percent 3 is not equal to 0 and x percent 5 is not equal to 0, then we want to do something. And there's a reason I'm putting parentheses. I want it to be clear that this, I want it to be clear to Python that this is one thing and this is another statement. Okay. And the reason it's just because I can write, let's write a statement like this, 5 and 8. I can run it. So this does make sense to Python, right? I think it's taking the biggest of the two. Okay, so this is why I want to put the parentheses here, just to be safe. Okay, so if x is not divisible by 3 and if x is not divisible by 5, we just want to print the number. So we're just gonna to keep things consistent. Holy cow, Rob! To keep things consistent, I'm just gonna do it like this. Format x. So that's what we're gonna print here. Okay, so if we run this, we should get nothing. Okay, if we try out 13, we should get this. Okay, so now I'm going to use a second statement at our disposal called else. Now the else statement has to follow the if statement. Okay, so how's this? We're going to do else, else. Now we're going to do everything that happens if x is divisible by 3 or 5. So else, if x, so now let's look at our cases. We want if x is divisible by 3, if x is divisible by 3, and it's not divisible by 5, then we want to print fizz. So and x percent 5 not equal to 0. Now what we want to do, notice I've got a nested thing here. Okay, so else if x is divisible by 3 and x is not divisible by 5, print this period. Oops, I forgot my period here. Dot. Wait, no. For this one, we want fizz, right? Okay. So if x is divisible by 3 and not divisible by 5, this is what we want. If x is divisible by 5, so if x is not divisible by 3 and it's divisible by 5. So if x is not divisible by 3, sorry, typing and talking right now is not working for me. So if x is not divisible by 3 and if x is divisible by 5, that's what this says in sort of Python code, then we want to print buzz. So print, so look, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna copy and paste. Now, once you get to copying and pasting a lot in code, it's also probably an indication that you're doing something wrong as well. Okay, so now let's think through the logic. If x is not divisible by 3 and x is not divisible by 5, just print the number. Okay, that's good. That's what we want. So let's run the code and make sure it still works. Okay, good. 13 is not divisible by 5 or 3, so we get what we want. Else, so in other words, if this evaluates to false, then it's going to do this. Okay, only if this evaluates to false will it drop down to else. So now we're in the else statement. So now this says if x is divisible by 3 and x is not divisible by 5, print fizz. Okay, so then the next one says if x is not divisible by 3 and x is divisible by 5, print buzz. Okay, so if I do 3 here, if I just do 3 here, this statement will evaluate to false because x mod 3 is equal to 0. Okay, so if I run this, this statement will evaluate to false. It's going to go to the else statement, and it's going to say, okay, if x percent 3 is equal to 0, okay, yeah, sorry, if x is divisible by 3, yes, check, and it's not divisible by 5, check, then print fizz. So we should get 3.fizz, okay, which is exactly what we get. So let's try it with 9. Okay, 9.fizz. Okay, so let's try the 15, or the 5. If we try 5, we're going to get 5. What about 10? We'll get 10. Let's try 12. We should get 12 fizz. Okay, good. Now what about the hard one, 15? What do you think is going to happen here? So I've been doing shift enter. What do you think is going to happen? We get nothing. Okay, why is that? Because yes, x is divisible by 3, but it's not divisible by 5. So actually from the top, x is equal to 15. 15 mod 3 is equal to 0. So this evaluates to false. Else, okay, if we look at this if statement, 15 mod 3 is equal to 0. Okay, so that's true. However, 15 mod 5 is also equal to 0. So for this statement to evaluate to be true, 15 mod 5 would have to not equal to 0. Okay, so with x is equal to 15, this overall statement is false. Similarly, this overall statement is false, so it doesn't do any of these. Okay, so now finally we could say if x mod 3 is equal to 0 and x mod 5 is equal to 0, then print this dot buzz. Oh no, we want fizzbuzz here, right? Fizzbuzz. And actually, let's change it to capital F. So we'll do capital F and capital B. Okay, so let's check on some numbers here. Let's try 1. We should just get 1. Good. What do we get when we try 2? We should just get 2. When we get 3, we should get fizz. When we try 4, we should get just 4. When we try 5, we should get buzz. Let's try 9. We should get fizz. Let's try 12. We should get fiv. Okay, let's try 15. That's kind of a hard one for us. 15. We're not getting either one. And the reason why, you might have noticed this and you're like screaming at your computer screen, I needed to do a % there, but I did an ampersand. Sorry about that. Okay, when we run this, we get fizzbuzz. Okay, so stuff like that happens all the time when I program. I'll try to minimize those mistakes as I'm teaching this stuff. Okay, so there's another way that we could do this as well using what's called elif, which is short for else if. So it's if something is true, do this. Else if do this is true, and so on and so forth. So let me give an idea about how this is going to go here. So I'm going to get rid of this, and this statement I'm going to write is elif. And what this is, and they need to be connected like this. So this says if this is true, then do this. Else if this is true, then do this. Okay, so I'm going to make all of these elif statements. Okay, now what's going to happen is this, like, if this is true, then it's not going to do the rest of them. Else, if this is true, then it's going to do this. Okay, so let's make sure this works. Okay, 1, 2, that's what we want. 3, okay, 3 fizz, that's what we want. 4, don't want anything. We should get buzz on 5. 6 should bring us back to fizz. 7 should just be 7. 8. Yep, 8, 9 should give us fizz, and it does. 10 should give us buzz. Isn't this exciting? 11 gives us nothing. 12 should give us fizz. Good. 13 should give us nothing. Okay. 14 should give us nothing. 15 should give us fizz buzz. Okay, we've only gone up to 15. Let's look at some bigger ones. Let's look at like 45. This is divisible by 3 and 15, so this should give us fizz buzz, and it does. Okay, so this program right now seems like it works pretty well. There are ways where you can make this much shorter, make this code shorter and more compact and kind of easier to modify and maintain. Not that that's going to be our kind of main purpose here, but let's say we change the rules of fizzbuzz. Let's say we do fizz if x is divisible by 7, and we do buzz if x is divisible by 19. Okay, well, how are we going to have to change here? Literally, like every place where we see a 3, we're going to have to change that to a 17 or a 7, whatever I said. And wherever we see a 5, we're going to have to change that to a 19. Okay, so that causes us a little bit of problem. So let's say there's one way we can modify this already to make it a little bit better and easier to maintain. Let's say we'll call it, make a new variable, we'll call it the fizznum. That's the number where it says fizz, that's equal to 3. And we'll say the buzznum, great Georgia Tech reference there, we'll call equal to 5. So now wherever I see a 3, I'm just going to replace this with fizznum fiznum, 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 and wherever I see a 5, I'm going to replace this with buzznum, 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 buzznum. Okay, and I'm going to run this code, and I should get fizzbuzz. Okay, that's great. 15, I run this code, I should get fizz. 10, I run the code, I should get buzz. 9, I run the code, I should get fizz, and so on and so forth. Okay, but now let's say I want to do the thing where, let's just say I want to switch this around. I want to switch the fizz and buzz numbers around. Now it's 9. When I run the code, I should get buzz. Okay, and I do. Let me press the button. Buzz. Whoops. Buzz, that's what I get. Okay, but now let's say I want 17 to be the fizz num and 19. I'm just picking prime numbers here. They don't have to be prime, but I want them to be. So now I'm going to run the code. Okay, nothing. Okay, what about if I do 17? Fizz. Okay, what about if I do 19? Buzz. Okay, what if I do another multiple? So 3 times 19, is this going to work? Buzz. Okay, right, 19 is the buzz num. What about fizz? What about if I do 376 times 17? That's going to be my x. Should get fizz, right? Because it's clearly a multiple of 17. Perfect. And it even tells me what the number here as well. Okay, let's try this. Times 19. So x is equal to a multiple of 17 and 19. So this should give us fizzbuzz. And it does. Okay, so perfect. So here's a way, very simple modification to make this program a little more maintainable. Okay, so let's now, okay, so let me do one other thing. So notice that no matter what, so let's think about this, no matter what it's, I feel like I'm getting into a Michael Scott thing here. I wonder if anybody got that. Let's go back to 3 and 5. Let's just make this 15. Okay, no matter what, we're always going to print out the number followed by a period. But here, every single time, like every single different case and subcase, we're explicitly doing that. Well, let's say we decide, you know what, we don't want a parentheses, or we don't want a period, we want a parentheses. Now I'm going to have to go back and change all of that and hope I don't make a mistake. So let's introduce another variable, and this is actually going to be helpful. Well, sorry, this is actually going to show us something new. So let's say our string. So we're going to print, instead of printing this, we're going to print our string. So let me just, what is a good variable name? So we'll call it numstring. This is going to be equal to this dot format with x. Okay, so if I just have this, so this really isn't. This is just to illustrate what's going to happen here. So when I run this, like when I run this code, I should just have this 15 printed with a dot, 15 printed with a dot, and then it'll run this part of the code. So I should get both things if I run the code, and that's what I get. So that's just to show you what's going on here. So this is numstring. Okay, and now notice every line, every case and subcase has the number, and every case and subcase prints it. So now I'm going to print down here, print numstring. Okay, and we'll see maybe numstring isn't the best name for this variable. So now what I'm going to do, instead of printing here, I'm going to change numstring here. Okay, so if x% is not equal to 0, so in other words, if we're not divisible by the fiznum and we're not divisible by the buzznum, in other words, if we're not divisible by 3 and we're not divisible by 5, we just print the string. So actually, we want to just do nothing here. So we'll come back to this, because this is a weird statement. So we'll do this. Okay, else, the num string, we just want to append to this string the word fizz. So all we're going to do is do num string. Here is a great line of programming. Sorry, so here's a great line of programming. This is not so great line of programming. We're going to say this is equal to num str plus the word fizz. And we actually want to have a space up here. Yeah, so I didn't have a space there, but I do want one. Okay, so now Python knows this is a string. It knows numstring is a string. And remember, it knows how to add two strings together. Okay, so this is one way to do it. Another really cool way to do this is just plus equals fizz. Whoops. And so now the plus equals means it's going to numString is equal to numString plus fizz. Okay, so if I come down here and let's say k is equal to 1, and then k is equal to k plus 1, and print k, I should just get 2. Perfect. Now I'm going to do k is equal to k plus equals 1, and I'm going to get 2 again. Okay, so it's a very good idiom to use. I think maybe that first came about in C. Okay, so that's what numString is there. Here, numString, we're going to add buzz. Okay, and down here, numString, we're going to add, plus equals fizz buzz. Okay, so now this, we're not doing anything here. Like this doesn't do anything because we already have the numString up here. So now we're going to get rid of this. Only now all the else ifs don't make sense. So now we're going to make this if. We're going to make this if. And we're going to make this if. Okay, so now if x is divisible by 3 and x is not divisible by 5, we're going to add fizz. If x is divisible by, not divisible by 3 and is divisible by 5, we're going to add buzz. And if it's divisible by both, we're going to add fizz buzz. Okay, so x is equal to 3. So what we should get is this right here, 3 fizz. Okay, and we do. So now let's try out some other cases. 5, we're going to get buzz. And let's try 15. That's a challenging one. Okay, we get fizz buzz. Okay, let's try 45 and run it. Okay, perfect. Let's try 3 times 5 times 45. Okay. All right, get fizz buzz again. Okay, now let's say we do want to change it from a period to a parentheses. Now when you run it, we'll get a parentheses. Okay, and so on and so forth. And you can see what you can do with this. Okay, you also might be wondering, like instead of typing x equals 3 running it, x equals 5 and running it, is there some way to automate that to just kind of look at all the numbers from 0 to 100? And the answer is yes, but we're not going to look at those. Those are called loops. We're not going to look at loops until next week.